Hello everyone, I'm here today to show you part 2 of making a mug. So we should have our body of our mug completed, and it should be about leather hard since it's sat overnight. I'm going to show you in this video how to make 3 different style handles that you will get to choose for your mug. And as you can see, when you pick them up, they will be leather hard, holding their shape, and I'll show you how to get them on your mug as well. So I'm going to put this aside in a bag so it does not dry out any further. So what you need to start with is you need to start with a small piece of clay, and it's about the size that fits inside my palm. And then you're going to roll that clay into a little log. And after the log, you're going to roll your piece into a cone. This is definitely longer than what we actually need, but better to have a little too much than not enough. So I have my cone, and then the last step is I'm going to flatten that cone out so that my handle is going to be roughly the same thickness as my rim, but definitely no thicker than a pencil. So those are our steps. So I've got a fresh piece of clay. And I'm going to roll this. The more even you can get your cone, the better off you're going to be for your handle. So if it's really lumpy, that means your handle is going to have a bunch of lumps in it also. So you want to work on being patient and keeping this nice and smooth and compressed into the table. After you get your cone, you are going to flatten it out again to about a pencil thickness. The way that I do that is I take this cone and I literally drop it onto my tabletop surface several times and then flip it over and do the same thing. So we can see it's flat on this side, so we'll flip it. And I'm holding it in the same spot, so I'm holding this real thin edge, which won't get attached to my mug, and the thicker edge. So I don't need this little piece, so I'm going to cut that off. And I'm going to make 2 more of these so I can show you each one of the handles. Okay, now that my pieces are prepped, I'm going to show you how to get each one of these. My current piece is a little thick for this handle, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap that just a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you how I smooth it out. So I'm going to take my sponge, drag it over the top of my piece, and I'm rounding out that edge so it's not super pointy or square, so I want to smooth that out. And then I'm going to pick the length that I want, and I'm going to make sure I can get all 4 of my fingers under there for now. And I'm going to cut off this really thick part that I don't need. So I'm going to cut at a beveled angle away from me, and any little flimsy part I have at the end. I want to let this sit in an arch at my station for a few minutes before I attach it to my mug, because I don't want it to be sticky anymore when I touch it. Okay. The next handle I'm going to show you has a ridge down the middle, or a little well. I like this type of handle because I like my thumb to be able to rest inside of it when I pick up and hold my mug. I like that little ridge. So when I do that, I do the same steps. I swipe this with my sponge, and then I'm going to take my thumb, and I'm going to start up here at the thick end, and I'm going to try and drag my thumb down the center line as even as possible. So a little bit of pressure so you see the clay squish out a little bit, and I drag my hand down, trying to keep it in the center. As I come to the end, I release some of my pressure because there's not as much clay down there. And I'm going to take my sponge, swipe and soften that. You can go back and do it one more time if you would like. Same step as I did before. I want to be able to get 4 fingers underneath my handle, and there's plenty of clay here, so I'm going to take this little tail off the end and some of this really thick part at the top. The part that's thicker than a pencil, I'm going to get rid of that. Let this sit in a little curve so it can become leather hard. Now the last one I'm going to show you is a double ridge. So I have a spine in the middle of this handle. This is just another style that you could do. Again, it has that little thumb indent that I think is nice. Okay, I'm gonna swipe my sponge down, make it so my thumbs can glide really easy. I'm gonna take a thumb on the right, thumb on the left, and I'm gonna make sure there's a tiny bit of space in between, and then start at the top, press down, and then I can do another one. So I can go back, maybe make that ridge a little bit taller, release my pressure as I get down to the thinner end. This definitely makes a wider handle, so if you got a bigger cup, this might be an option. And then I'd fold this down. Again, I'm going to get rid of that thick part that's thicker than a pencil, and I'm going to get rid of this little part that doesn't have my ridge. I'll let those sit at my station. Okay. Now, when your handles, when you can pick them up and they don't flop around, but they're still soft enough that you can bend them, so leather hard, we are going to add these to our mugs. I have this thick part down here that I don't need, so I'm going to cut this off, doing a little bevel cut. Whoop. Okay. Now, I'm going to attach my handle right on the seam of my cup, and I like my handle to sit right below my rim, and then I can arch my handle down so it sits right above my foot. So it's not touching my foot, it's right above it, and it's not right on my rim, it's right below it. This protects it so that when I sit it down, I don't accidentally knock that handle off. So now that I know the spot I want my handle in, I'm going to make a little mark with my needle tool underneath the bottom part of my handle and the top part of my handle. You'll notice the wide part of my handle is at the top and the narrow side is on the bottom. So it matches the shape of my cup. Wide at the top, narrow at the bottom. Anytime I want a piece of clay to stick, I have to score and slip. So I'm going to score this really well. Make sure I score it to where I have all those clay crumbs. I always say it looks like Velcro. It should be nice and fuzzy, okay? And I want to do the same thing on my handle. So I'm just gonna score really well, back and forth, lots of fuzz. Now, because both of these pieces are leather hard, you are gonna want to use slip. So I have a little bit of slip at my station. I'm gonna paint that on. Pretty generous amount. Okay. Now I'm going to take the top part of my handle and I'm going to press this in place, rocking it back and forth. And you can see that the slip is kind of squishing outside the handle. That's good. That's a nice bond together. And then I'm going to take this other part and I'm going to do the same thing. Gently press that down into place. I don't want to change the shape of my mug. I just want to press those down. If your handle starts to crack, you want to make sure you take care of that right away. Little bit of moisture can press that back together. Okay. Now I want to clean all these little goobs off of my handle. So I'm going to take my sponge around the edge, make sure I don't see any of them. I'm not actually bonding my handle down. I'm just taking away the clay crumbs and smudges. So I just pressed it into place. I'm going to do the same thing at the top. Now it can be challenging to get inside of that inner part of the handle. So I'm going to just use a paintbrush and bond those together and sweep away any boogers that might be there. And I do that on the bottom also. So just really pressing that down. And now that my handle is in place, I can play with my arch, lift it a little bit. And there you have it, a little mug. You want to make sure that your rim is also well cared for before you let this dry. So I would take a few minutes to make sure that the opening of your mug is round. Take your fingers maybe on the edge, pinch them so you don't have any sharp drop-offs, that everything is nice and rounded. And then before you sit it to dry, you want to make sure that you sign the bottom of your work.